we've kind of prepared a few questions, so we're going to start off, and then we'll open the floor later to any questions in the audience, and see if we can get something from you guys. Well, first, my first question is kind of, so the play's like come back to the court, and for me initially I was really like affected by the staging, especially the glass box. For me, I was like, oh, okay. I felt like you were like putting a microscope to these individual characters. I just kind of wanted you to maybe like elaborate a bit, or kind of tell us a bit about where that came from and what it was.
Well, when we first, well, I wasn't here, but back in 1986, when Road was first produced at the court, it was in the theatre upstairs, and it was a promenade production. A lot of you probably know this, but which means that the audience move around, led by Scullery, who was played by Ian Drury, yes, pop star Ian Drury, in that first production. No, Edward Tudor-Pole, and then Ian Drury, and he moved downstairs. And then they moved it was really successful, and also that kind of promenade production, that whole aesthetic was incredibly new and exciting and radical at the time, and contributed massively to the experience of the show and the success of it. And then they moved it downstairs, and they kind of they put the stage over the stalls, over where you're sat now, and did it in here, and they used everything around there. So that was a really, really seminal production. And it's not really, it's Matt Stafford Clark revived it, but it was a tour for Out of Joint. But it's not had a kind of sit-down London production really since then. And so my interest came from the fact that Vicky Featherstone, our artistic director, about 3 years ago, when it was coming up to our 60th anniversary, which was last year, she asked us to read all the seminal Royal Court plays, of which Road is one. And I'd read it when I was 17. Back in Huddersfield when I was at sixth form college, and it was really instrumental in making me feel that theatre could be about me, and theatrically ambitious and formally ambitious and all those things. And so it had a massive effect on me. And then reading it again 3 years ago, I was absolutely gobsmacked by how fresh it felt, but also it felt like it was written from a point in time where things couldn't get any worse. And we've succeeded. And those people are even poorer now. So that felt as good a reason as any to do it. And then I started thinking about how we get the sense of the different houses, because obviously in the promenade production you would walk around and you would visit each platform, and the furniture would be on there. And so this sounds the opposite of the politics I've been talking about. There's a brilliant Alexander McQueen fashion show called Boss, in which he has a mirrored box, and it opens and it's got a woman in with her butterflies. Of course you know it. And I've always loved that idea, and so I thought of the idea of having more levels on stage, and I loved the idea of these people raising up from the ground. And kind of being trapped in the boxes and all those things, and then being able to open the doors and everything like that.
That's really interesting. Could I ask, like, for the actors, for you guys, maybe Dan or someone, how did it feel having that space and like having to work with that, maybe through the process of being contained in there at moments or on top?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't actually get to go in the box, unfortunately. I get to go on top of it, which is really cool. It's actually really, it's an amazing sort of, this sort of height on this stage, to be able to like connect with all the other levels of the theatre, as well as not just the stalls. It really sort of opens it out, so I really enjoy being on there, yeah, and climbing all over it and jumping down. It's cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's very hot in there. Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you don't feel like you're cut off from the audience or anything like that. You feel. Sorry, my doors are open. Yes.
In more ways than one.
But you kind of it's so nice to have like the audience look in on these people's lives and see it in the detail and the honesty that these characters and how well they've been written so yeah, it's a really. I mean, I've never sort of done anything like this before, so Yeah, it was a real. Cheers, Liz. Yeah, so it was a real, amazing experience. It was it's great. It's great to be on top of it. You're like right up, you're kind of in line with the top of the circle, so you just see everyone, and it's cool.
All through rehearsals, Liz and June, particularly, who plays Molly, she's the first person to be inside, and then Mark, who plays Jerry, and then Mike. They were saying, so we'll be able to see, won't we, and everything in the audience. You can't see anything.
But you
Because
can
it's
see
mirrored.
your own reflection.
You can see your own reflection, and as soon as, before we started the tech, I kind of came into the box and I was like, oh my. And so we kind of changed bits, like, because your experience was...
Yeah, Valerie was meant to, well, not meant to, but initially the door was remained shut on her. But because Valerie speaks directly out all the time, or perhaps to the gods, all I could see was my face, so I was just looking everywhere to avoid my face. So then John came up with the idea that she goes out to see if her husband is actually going to come back like he said he would, and which it works brilliantly with the story. And so, and it wasn't presented as a solution, because you sort of get used to things that you're presented with. You try and make them work, but the idea that she goes out and looks for him was great. The other characters, really, they're more in they're reminiscing, or they're being nostalgic, so they're using the whole space as opposed to just looking out like Valerie.
So the play is centred around sort of overlooked working class, especially up in the north. So I just wondered for you actors what it was like playing that role individually, and do you think there are enough sort of working class voices on the stage?
I was first taken to Rome when I was 14 by my school, and like John says, it's the first time I ever heard my own voice in a play where I thought, oh, okay, so I'm included in this theatre world, and it's so special to me because the characters in this play I know from my own life, from people I've met, from members of my family. So in terms of it being, sorry, I haven't really answered the question, but the working class element of it is that it's my world. So what a joy and a privilege and an honour to be able to put and be part of my world on stage in London as my job. I don't know about answering is there a lot of parts for working class actors? I think that's quite a tricky one. I think there are some wonderful parts, and I think also in TV and film that there's that whole conversation going on there. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that one.
Well, it's about accessibility, and I think, and if you haven't really got access to go to the theatre, then how would you then be inspired to write for the theatre? And if you haven't got access to people that can, they're talking about maybe taking drama off the curriculum and that. And so how are young people going to get inspired to write? Although, you might like for telly, but no, I don't think there are enough working class voices on stage because I don't think there's the access anymore. Or if there ever was, really. But of course, a lot can come from adversity, but it shouldn't always have to be so hard, like Louise says at the end of the play. It shouldn't have to be so hard,
I think a lot of us in the cast are from, to certain degrees, from that background. A lot of us are northern, and we grew up in that kind of world to a certain degree. So we identify with it as it's a very special play, and it's an honour to be in it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess we're seeing a play that was done in 30 years ago on a 21st century stage, like the current stage. I guess that question probably came from, are there other plays out there that are staged nationally on national stages that we get to hear that voice, I guess. But a lot of the conversation or things that were provoked for me were about the fact that, like John touched on, that we're in a political climate now which is even worse to when it was staged in the 80s, or written, sorry, in the 80s. Is there any I don't want to ask, yeah, but is there any like feelings from you guys about the current climate and being undone?
So hopefully there will be writers or actors or artists and poets who come up, who do something that none of us were expecting, because I don't think anybody was expecting Road. They weren't expecting it to be Promenade. You know, they weren't expecting those voices on a London stage. It wasn't right. It didn't fit, and yet it did.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to be surprised by writers who come and do things that we couldn't have, we haven't imagined.
Yeah.
That's what's wonderful about adversity, is it makes people fight to say what needs to be said, and it can't be predicted almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes it exciting at times.
Yeah, I mean, during rehearsals, and you know, nobody knew this was going to happen, but very generously, Theresa May called a snap election, and 40% of the people that voted very, very clearly for socialism, which kind of really fed into our conversations, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and we got really quite kind of deep into, you know, all the actors chose areas of policy and politics from the 1980s, from 1986, which connected to their characters. You did, what did you?
I did housing,
masculinity,
yeah, and sort of like mental health and depression as well.
And we did seminars to each other, kind of all through rehearsals, and presented, which actually everyone was terrified of them, but we really enjoyed them.
It was really nice.
Just, you know, just thinking, you know, how that connects to now and everything, because it's not, you know, it's not on the nose political. It's about people's lives. But, you know, someone like Valerie, her marriage has collapsed due to unemployment. You know, and so it's in the kind of bones of the show. And,
yeah, I'd like to talk about this, the grimness of the play, because I feel this connects to what we've just been talking about. The sort of feeling that now we're back where we were 30 years ago, kind of. And I feel that there are stylistic devices used to translate that to the audience in a theatrical way. So one thing I lined out in the question is that the music in the beginning gets cut super abruptly in the kind of scene changes. Is that like a thing you chose to do to translate that to the audience, that sort of feeling?
I mean, that's really defined by how long the scene changes take. Just otherwise, we'd just be stuck there listening to music.
Yeah.
So, but what Gareth Fry, our sound designer, has done is the track continues to play under the scene.
Yeah.
It's either in the radio, you know, or on the telly, obviously with Bullseye. Great to hear Bullseye on the telly. Or it's outside, or you know, coming out of a club. So we try and do that, but it's really just so that the audience and the actors aren't hanging around.
Okay.
Once the scene is set, with nothing to do, it's kind of dictated by what needs to be done.
No, for me it was a moment of like, all of a sudden there was joy for a second, but it was...
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
But it was great to be reminded of those fantastic introductions of those tunes. Like, there was something about all of the introductions, they're energetic and they're sort of maybe a bit angry, or they're saying something in them. So it really, it sets you up for the next scene. So I felt that was a really
the burst of it,
motif,
yeah.
like you get this, something's about to happen. It's not a song, it's something else.
What do you think about the grimness, Faye?
The grimness
Yeah.
of the piece in general. I mean, I think, look, what we're dealing with is something that's very grim.
Yeah.
It's people struggling to survive. So, although it can be difficult for people to face that grimness, this shit is happening every single day to people. So, I don't apologise or worry about the grimness in this show, because this is a show that, you know, we all wanted to make under John's direction, and it needs to be made, man. This, you know, I mean, look at Grenfell Tower. All that. I don't want to get too far into, but the grimness is kind of, if you don't have the grimness, you don't see what's really going on. So I'm fine with the grimness, like.
It's about representing the unrepresented.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Giving a voice to the people who don't have a voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you worked on movement with Jonathan Watkins, and obviously there's a lot of stylised movement. I just wondered sort of what that process was like and how that fed into the rest of the process.
Oh, yeah.
Dance captain in the warm-ups.
This is some of the tracks we warmed up to.
Oh, he's on Down the Road. Halfway Down the Road and Michael Jackson.
Final Countdown.
Final Countdown. The Coronation theme tune was
Coronation Beat.
Yeah, Coronation Street, not Coronation.
Dallas.
Did it to Dallas.
Dallas.
Did Steve.
Yeah, I did Roadrunner, I think. Not Roadrunner, the Talking Heads song.
Road to Nowhere.
Road to Nowhere. Yeah, but we had a great one today. We had 1, 2, 3, shake your body down. So, yeah, so we did that. But dance, the movement. Jonathan Watkins was fantastic. He was such a great energy, and he was so into what we were doing. He's from Bradford. He was a young lad at the age of 12, went to the Royal School of Ballet, then danced for the Royal Ballet, and then retired from there 4 years ago to become a choreographer and theatre maker. And so he was fantastic, and for him it was really important that these voices were being put on stage. So he felt with his heart and soul that this was something great to do. And so we did loads of like drunk acting with him, drunk movement across the stage, and finally we came up with what we had. And then the Lippy Kids at the end, that was brilliant. In the original script, what happens is those 4 people just start sort of chanting somehow might escape, and somehow might escape, and it gets louder and louder and more frantic. But John said, what did you say, John?
John.
It was, yeah, no, it was, there's just something about, Skin Lads, the way he finds spirituality, the Buddhism, that felt so right from Manchester, my experience in Manchester. It felt really connected to that, and because it is a violent city, but it's also got this amazing spirituality and kind of coursing through it as well. And I loved the idea, and Lippy Kids is one of my, I mean, it's not of the era, it's much later, but it's one of the, you know, that whole idea about Build a Rocket Boys. And I wanted all of them to be on stage at the end, and for them to reclaim, basically, the grimness back, and say, no, you know, we are in control, we can breathe. And that led into a Tai Chi that kind of peppered through the whole show. I mean, you made a lot of that of yourselves, didn't you?
Yeah. Nick snitches.
No. It's really bad because I'm like talking, I'm trying finding it really hard not to say this, oh, I really like this part. But,
you can say that if you like.
The gestures did feel, the Tai Chi, the kind of sequence felt like it had moments of like pedestrian gestures that made it flow into that, which was I was like, oh, I can see a little bit of this character here.
It's true, because Jonathan was really good at picking out like the Kurt's speech, that the press lead, that was like, we ended up being this sort of ball in front of us.
And like Skin Lads.
Nick
a chip.
Pulling a pipe.
Open a window.
For you, John, like in your work, like as something stylistically, where does that come from, wanting to have that movement in there? I know you said, sorry, about like spirituality.
Yeah, you know, I mean, something I love. I mean, theatre is, it's a place of the imagination, and music and movement, I find, are really wonderful at getting people to connect with a show with their bodies instead of their minds, and something else opens up, something kind of, you know, more emotional sometimes. And you know, and I just really love, I think actors, especially this lot, they're amazing. They should be athletes, and you know, they should have, you know, it's a visceral, physical arena, theatre. I'm not interested in the slightest in putting a real living room on stage. You've probably noticed. Just because we shouldn't for a second. The whole point is that you're there and we're here and we're aware of each other, and there's a connection that happens. And you get into something deeper, I think, by finding an expressionism. That's my taste.
I think as an actor as well, like you sort of, it allows you to express something different not just using your words or your thoughts, but your body as well, expressing something different across the audience. And I personally love it. Yeah, it takes me to a totally different place. Yeah, it's really good.
I'd say before we go to the audience questions, there's one thing we've just talked about at the end, and that there's this sort of hope in the end. So now we sit here 30 years after it's been staged for the first time. How can we make sure 30 years from now we're not going to be sitting here again talking about the same play with the same connotations that we're talking about today? Just to everyone.
Is anyone? Take red buttons away from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Maybe. How is that man allowed?
I think the theatre has an amazing power to change the way people think, and I think this is one way of bringing 400 people into a theatre in Chelsea in Sloane Square, which is now actually a Labour constituency, but But yeah, bringing them in and showing them things like this, and opening people's minds, opening people's eyes to, and to showing them, like I said before, people who aren't represented, people who don't have a voice in this time in politics at the moment. And I think it's really important for young writers, not just young, old writers, directors, theatre makers, actors, to push work like this and to show people, show audiences how some people live, and yeah, I think that's one way. There's plenty of others as well.
A lot of people, well not a lot, but we do get some people leaving the stalls after during the interval, they don't come back. And I think that's really interesting because they obviously find the content too challenging on some level. But even if they leave, it'll stay with them. What they've seen will stay with them.
Yeah.
And that in itself
is an achievement.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, you're gone.
I'd love to say.
I think we make Scullery Prime Minister. I think that's the solution.
That's the solution. For the people who leave, I'd like to actually set up the box in their home. So when they get up, it just comes up. Tunes in there, you're Valerie.
And you can kneel in chairs.
So we're going to move to the audience, I think, if there's any questions in the audience. But before we ask anyone a question, I always say, try and avoid to do what I do. I mean, don't do what I do, which is try and give a question and refrain from giving too many compliments, because John's head is big enough. So if you guys want to put up your hands, we'll take them as they come.
I am a student studying abroad from America, so I would love to hear your take on how road is relevant to outsiders, how it affects us.
You have poor people too. It was actually, it was produced in Lincoln Centre. Kevin Bacon was in it. And John Cusack, Joe Cusack. I wonder what his accent was like. Kevin, but anyway.
Kevin Bacon is a northerner.
Well, I'd actually like to ask you that, because you've probably got a much more interesting take on it than me, because you're not northern.
Sure.
So.
We have poor people. I thought it was really refreshing going into a completely different realm and being able to step into the shoes of these people who I know nothing about. I don't personally know their struggles, but I felt them. So I thought that you, to give you a compliment, heaven forbid, but I thought you all did a great job giving that story without having to provide all of the background details. I still felt that connection with them. So.
That's great.
It's Detroit, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
It's the train parks, and it's the parts of town that you don't go to, you know, it's the Compton, it's yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We have another question there?
I'm not sure how to phrase this as a question, because I was sort of overwhelmed by the sense of it, and it might have come out clear, but like, I was really moved by like the sort of like music, and like, it sort of felt like there was a lot of cabaret infused into like the show, and I think that's probably in the writing, but like, just the way that characters, like with Try a Little Tenderness and like them then like going into sort of a splurge of thought, like it feels like a sort of like bacchic trance-like state, like that the characters were going into, and like being so oppressed by like everything, and then being able to find escape like through expression.
Yeah.
Just felt really magical, and I just kind of wanted to like ask about that.
Well, the yeah, no, I mean, I've never seen it on stage. I've seen the film version that Alan Clark did, but I you know, and I still wasn't quite prepared when we first did Try a Little Tenderness. Just I mean, it's so brave and amazing and radical, the idea of listening to a whole song on stage and just watching 4 people. It's Jim Cartwright. I mean, it still feels like it's way beyond its time in terms of a playwriting event. And also, it seems to connect so truthfully with my experience of how working class people connect with music and how they use it as an escape. Particularly soul music, like that. What's your quote, Dan? You get drunk.
Soul, real down there, soul.
And you put on Otis and let rip.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that bit. So that's what you do. You drink. You listen to Otis and let rip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop going mad.
And watching those 4 faces, you know, I could never ever tire of it. It feels like a real honour and privilege, you know, just what you're saying, and actually how they decide that, you know, the 2 lads have decided to wear suits. They're signing on, but they've decided to wear suits and sharpen up, and I find that really, really moving. And then Louise and Carol end up finding an articulation, and they kind of, you know, they surprise themselves, and there seems to be a kind of dignity that comes from within, which I find incredibly moving. And the way that Gareth Fry, our sound designer, has kind of let that song, it's a beautiful song, isn't it? It's unbelievable how he lets that roll from the stage and kind of envelops you as an audience. It's Jim Cartwright, wow. And that's all I've got to say about that little moment.
It's unavoidable, I feel like, as an audience member sitting there. It's so visceral. It's like, even like the fact that the sound is like vibrating the floor. I don't know what it feels like. It must feel like on stage.
It's like,
what is it like?
Off on stage. It's so loud, and you can just feel it in every.
Those speakers back to the bass, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you can hear every instrument.
Yeah.
There was one night Guy Garvey actually came to see the show, and he said, "I've never heard piano in that song before." So to hear a musician go,
He's the lead singer of Elbow.
so to hear a musician go, "Oh, I've listened to a tune in a different way than I have before."
Person in the back, John.
Oh,
Yeah.
Another American accent, sorry. You mentioned that it ends on a tone of hope, and yet these characters have, I feel like the whole play they're stagnant, they're hopeless. They have no reason left to hope other than maybe this escape of music. But then you also mentioned that the Tai Chi, and they are allowed to breathe. Do you think that the characters, is it kind of like how Joey says, are they saved? Do they get to breathe? Do they get to escape? Like they might somehow one day if they scream hard enough?
probably different for everybody, isn't it? And you know, I might think one thing in every, you know, I get quite moved by the power of the community. I think it's power in community.
Yeah.
That's what we need at the moment. And that's why I wanted to bring everyone back on stage, bring Joey back, bring Molly back, see Jerry again, and you see them as a community because it's through listening to each of the stories, I think, and understanding what people are going through, and not being forced to just think about ourselves, that hope lies.
Because I think that every single character is fighting to find a better way. Every single one of them, and all in different ways. Even if that's dying and killing themselves, they're still like searching for hope. They're incredible. Every one of those characters is just wanting for it to be better. They're having their homes taken, their own homes taken away from them. And the Joey, when he's on his own in the thing, you know, the older guy, he's searching for a way. He's like, the past was where it was okay, and he wants to get back there, and he can't, you know, but he's fighting for it. It's really sad, but it's really, they're full of spirit, every character. I know we say it's grim, but these are people who are all just looking for a better way, you know. I find them really inspiring, and like John said, you know, that sense of community. You know, he's them all going, no, we're going to do this. And it might look mad to other people, you know, but actually they're all like, no, we go out on a Saturday night, we get drunk and we fight.
You know, in 1986, I think it was that year Margaret Thatcher, you may remember her, said the famous phrase, there's no such thing as society. Well, I think that's nonsense. And I think we're about to see exactly what the power of society and community is.
Gentleman in the grey shirt at the back.
Okay, so this is an unpleasant question, but somebody's got to ask it. Have you succeeded, do you think, in avoiding putting a northern stereotype on stage for a southern audience to laugh at?
Good question.
Have we succeeded in putting a northern stereotype?
No, have you succeeded in avoiding?
In avoiding. Okay.
I think it's about, you have to look at what the play is about. Have we succeeded in showing that people are struggling and that life can be fucking awful and that they will still be resilient? I think we've succeeded in that, yes.
I'm just quite interested as well, is everyone southern here?
No.
So that's an interesting...
You could set it anywhere. It could be set in Glasgow, it could be set in somewhere in London.
Yeah.
It's the same feeling, it's the same themes.
Can I ask, have you increased the working class audience to hear your message here at the Royal Court?
I mean, it gets more and more diverse every week, the Royal Court audience, just in terms of where audiences are coming from, the boroughs of London, etc. In some ways, you know, it should be a mixed audience, shouldn't it? That see, you know,
Jessica, you were talking about the first production being seminal and being groundbreaking and all of those things. And I just wonder, because obviously your passion is about the working class voice being heard. Is it being heard by the working classes here at the Royal Court? And that's a genuine question. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I suppose what I'm saying is I want all audiences to hear it. Working class people see their lives on stage, but also people who don't know those stories, seeing them.
I think that's also like a question to theatre in general. Outside of this, it's like that's an ongoing thing that people within theatre, we are constantly striving to challenge and striving to make more diverse and accessible and exclusive. And I don't think it's not the responsibility necessarily of the director or the cast, but it's something that we all, as a community, as a society, need to just challenge and make sure it reaches as many people as it can.
I mean, you know, the two questions are linked and are really fascinating. And you know, I suppose I was really keen. We're gobby and we're brassy and we're daft, us Northerners, and I didn't want to shout, you know, I wanted that to be, you know, we enjoy a sing-song and we enjoy swearing, and we enjoy shouting at each other, as well as, you know, whispering to each other and loving each other, being compassionate with each other, and I felt licensed because of who we all are, that we could put all that on stage.
I think as actors as well, you always want to be truthful and real, so I mean, it's quite a hard question to ask whether we're aware of being stereotypical or stereotyped, because that's something we never want to be, I suppose, as actors. So it's more of a question whether you think we came across stereotypical to you, or whether, it's more of a question for an audience, or a decision for them to make, rather than the actor, because I think our job is to always try and play the character as truthfully real as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, and when you read Road on the page, like, there was nothing stereotypical about it. It was so extraordinary and refreshing, and like really expansive. And actually, John Tiffany was brilliant in rehearsals.
Did I?
Well, he said many things. It was brilliant. But when we were rehearsing Valerie, he said, let's stop making out that Northerners are dumb. Let's stop, you know, let's get rid of that. Let's elevate the poetry. It is poetic, and let's lift it. And I really think that, like, John really, that's what he kept trying to do. And yeah, so I mean, there are scenes that are funny, but like Michelle, one of the funniest scenes in the play is Helen and the Soldier. And Michelle is, you know, she's Northern Irish. She's not Northern, as you would say, Northern. Northern is like, would be in England and all that, say, and yet she didn't have to ask about the humour, did she? And actually it was played for its tragedy, really.
Absolutely.
This lonely woman.
And June's Scottish, you know, originally, like, it's not...
So yeah, I don't...
We did a lot of voice work with Charmian Horn, the voice coach, on that she would use for Shakespeare. Because, you know, when you've got lines like walking through meat in high heels, swimming through it, can we not have before again, can we not, you know, that one of my joys was looking at them as Greek tragedy or Shakespeare or something like that, and so trying to get into them that way, and I had the actors to do it.
Yeah, I think like personally, anyway, I get to give you loads of confidence now, that it was beautiful. Like on the page, it is extremely poetic, but you've created something that is extremely human and tangible and visceral for an audience. And I think all of you as cast and as John, like, I loved it. I think it was amazing. But yeah, thank you for.